Okay, we're going to wait just another few minutes for our missing commissioner, who we hope is on his way, and then we'll get started in just a few minutes.
I'm going to run up and get my computer. Be right back.
Okay, that's the same amount of time. Oh, I need to. If you kind of get mesmerized. Oh, yeah. We need to do that. Oh, no, wait. Oh, my God. But that's good. No. The USDA, Department of Education, and the USDA. the USDA. That's good. Yeah. Yeah. Instead of gaining leverage. It's like Monday or something.
You should be right here. And who are you, by the way?
Okay, good morning, everyone. I'd like to call the November 22nd, 2016 Arapahoe County Board of County Commissioners to order this morning. To my left is John Christopherson, Deputy County Attorney. We have Gail Stumpo, who is our recorder, Assistant Clerk to the Board. Ms. Stumpo, would you please call roll?
Commissioner Bockenfeld, absent and excused. Commissioner Holland.
Here.
Commissioner Sharp. Here. Commissioner Jackson. Here. Commissioner Doty, absent and excused.
Thank you. Commissioner Holland, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Please join me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And for the record, Commissioner Bonkenfeld just joined us. Mr. Christopherson, are there any modifications to the agenda?
There are no modifications today.
Okay, thank you. We have the approval of one set of minutes from what? Oh, adoption of the, oh, sorry. So may I have a motion to adopt the agenda as presented?
I so move.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, that motion passes. Now we can approve the minutes. From November 1st, 2016, we had a full board. May I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to approve the minutes from November 1st, 2016. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none, those minutes have been adopted. Thank you. Now is the time that we have a period of time for our citizens to speak to the commissioners on any item not related to the agenda. There is a 3-minute time limit. And do we have someone who wishes to speak? Yes? Okay. They'll come up, and just remember that you have 3 minutes, and the yellow light comes on when you have 30 seconds left. The red light comes on when you're done. If you have more to say, what we'll do is you can email that. It's short? Okay. So Diana Mays will be reading.
Diana Mays, BOCC Administration Manager, reading into the record for J.M. Fay, who lives at 2575 South Syracuse Way, F201, Denver, Colorado, 80231. That's unincorporated. Good morning, Commissioners. Not sure which of you have followed the aftermath of the election, but the consensus is the voters were sending a clear message. This message was we need a change of course and we need to drain the swamp. Arapahoe County has some swamp of their own to be drained. We refer to the county itself, the Sheriff's Office, and the Arapahoe Library District, of which you appoint the board of. We said the county because the buck stops with the 5 of you, and you have no fully dealt with the 2 illegal spaces next to our garage, so it actually stops. Recently, the door has been hit again multiple times, so the panels need to be replaced. You still owe apologies for 20 years plus of nonsense, and there has been no offers of compensation. We also just had the 3 pillars knocked down, moved, and we have had no proof of what occurred, and the story we were told is not believable. Sheriff Department has to be drained between District 5, where we live, and the jail. We are sure since the sheriff is a Republican, and so is most of this board, you can work together to do this. All I need, Arapahoe Library District needs to be completely drained as well. We have met a lot of people over the years of this nightmare, and you might like to know you are violating state and federal laws, including civil rights, with your actions or lack thereof. With 2 of you off the board come January, we can only hope the small progress you have made to actually helping our county, especially those of us who live in unincorporated, is going to be accelerated by a lot. While we are extremely happy we finally got Wi-Fi and you are live streaming these sessions, there is a lot more that can be done, including a snow shoveling ordinance. Mr. Bockenfeld and Ms. Doty, you have been in elected office with the county since 2004. Do you really think it's fair of you to leave this mess to Mr. Baker and Ms. Conti? Commissioners, we have had enough with this county. CFPD, CCV, ALD, and one nasty HOA bullying us for things you caused along with others. Bullying us for things you did to stifle dissent, which you are not allowed to do under state, federal law, going out of your way to harm us, etc., etc., etc. You further need to deal with all of these entities so that one citizen can get some peace in her life, has the ability to get back on her feet, etc. FYI, we have knocked on a lot of doors in many parts of unincorporated, and all of us want this snow shoveling ordinance, and all of us expect our BOCC to actually do things to help our county, including unincorporated. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Ms. Fay. Are there any other citizens who wish to comment at this time? Seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the consent agenda has passed. Now we move on to our general business items. The attorney for this item, public hearing, Arapahoe County Rural Transportation Impact Fee Study, adoption of a rural transportation impact fee. The attorney for this is Mr. Robert Hill, and the presenter is Brian Weimer.
Thank you, Chair.
Just before you get started, this matter has been noticed in accordance with Colorado Open Meetings Law. The board has jurisdiction to proceed.
Thank you.
For the record, Brian Weimer, Transportation Division Manager, Public Works Department. Over the past several years, we've been going through an evaluation of a transportation impact fee for the eastern portion of Arapahoe County, and today we have before you a consideration for adoption of said fee. With me today is the consultant, Tischler Weiss, Dwayne Guthrie, and what we're going to present is the information that you've seen previously, but for full transparency and discussion, we'll show you all the slides. We'll go through them fairly quickly, and you'll have it for the record. So the way we're going to do this is kind of backwards. We're going to show you the high level first and the solution, and then some of the background where we came up with this. So included in this is the fee area. Fee area is essentially from Gun Club East, the entire Arapahoe County, and it would cover the unincorporated portions. The roadways in green are the roadways that are considered under this fee and eligible for adoption. If you remember from the public meeting, we did have some comments, and we made some adjustments in the final presentation to add 6th Avenue through Sky Ranches, and also a designation of 10 lane miles for undesignated roadway at this point to accommodate future unidentified roads where we might need to have an improvement made. This is the list of improvements, and for some reason we're shifted a little bit. I don't know what that is, but nonetheless, we have technical support. Perfect. Right. Wow, that's amazing. That's great. That's amazing. So you'll be able to see the roadways that are eligible for this fee. Associated with that is a total cost of representing $173 million. $110 million of it is the growth cost associated with the fee, and then the growth percentages identified for each individual roadway. All of this comes from our transportation plan that we prepared in 2010. What you'll see here is the variable inputs that we had with it in terms of average lane miles per trip, the additional lane miles that we're adding, and how we calculated the preliminary fee, the fee that was a rational nexus, and that is the preliminary fee that is listed there. Per direction from the board in a study session in October, we were asked to revise that fee. We revised it downward, and the revised fee that you see is on the right. Residential dwelling units will be charged based on the size of that dwelling units, as well as non-residential, industrial, retail, restaurant, office, and others will be based on per 1,000 square feet of that area. This is what can be anticipated to collect from that fee, and what I would like you to focus on is the growth cost of $110 million that we identified in the fee study. Lowering the fees generates the dollars that are identified below, the $75 million, and therefore the gross share goes from 64% down to 43%, indicating that we will need to come up with the additional revenue ourselves, being Arapahoe County, with the fee as we have. From a comparison standpoint, we were asked to take a look at that. So this is where we fall relative to other jurisdictions in the area that are considering fees or have adopted fees. Other comparisons that we've made, we've identified that pretty much out east, cost to build a home is $175 to $200 a square foot. That is less than 1% of the cost to do that, actually 0.55 to 0.62. In addition, Castle Rock is currently considered, if not adopted, these fee rates that are being considered. Arapahoe County Rural Transportation Impact Fee, which is the fee area for the Smoky Hill area, has a cost identified there on the screen. And you also ask us to take a look at what it would cost or what are the impacts. And so we looked at a hypothetical development, that being 333 single-family dwelling units, about density of almost 5 dwelling units to the acre, and it would be on 67 acres. The total amount is the amount for each one of those jurisdictions in terms of what that total cost is, including fees, processing, that sort of thing. If we look at adding this fee that we're talking about, our comparison goes to $1.7 million. Adams County, with their existing fee, is $1.6 million. So you can see that we're relatively compare with Adams County, which was one of the goals of the project, to remain competitive. In terms of the resolution that is before you, I'll summarize some of that. We have land use definitions. It would be residential, first and second floor, and excludes unfinished basements. Office and other services are identified there. Commercial would be retail and restaurants, and then industrial as well. So we've identified those, what those might be. Ancillary uses are not charged. Those ancillary uses could be like a garage or shed. It would be where you would generate traffic. If there's a building expansion, that building expansion would be greater than 50%, but the existing development or the existing square footage would be subtracted out of that, so you would have just the gross share of what the expansion would be. Eligible improvements include capacity improvements, arterial travel lanes, gravel to pavement improvements, intersection improvements. The board has asked us to bring this back for consideration every 2 years, and so we do that, and state statute requires that it's reviewed periodically as well. The rate of development, system needs, Colorado construction price index would all be considered when we bring that back and present that information. The interest collected on the dollars would remain in that account and used for such improvements. So the recommended fee schedule is as represented here and in your package. Just a little bit of background. We were looking at this from a platting versus 35-acre parcel perspective to make them equal playing ground. Currently, We can only assess improvements on platted property as they come through a land development process. 35-acre parcels do not have to go through a land development process, as you well know, and therefore no improvements are associated with it. Therefore, there's a disproportionality associated between those two types of processes, and this would balance that out. The 2035 transportation plan showed about $700 to $900 million. $300 million of that was roughly in the eastern area. And I need to point out that not all roadways in the eastern Arapahoe County would be paved associated with that plan. So the recommendations that we provided are based on a backbone system needed to support development as it occurs out east. We did evaluate certain lot sizes, and there are a lot of lots, almost nearly 5,000 lots out east. Some are 40 acres and above, and then they go down from there. So this map, and I'll show you here, represents the purple is those 35-acre lots that have already been created that can be built upon. And then it goes down in terms of kind of the pink color. The green is the 10 to 20 acres. 5 to 10 acres is kind of that brownish color. And then less than 5 is the magenta. So it's a little difficult to see, but that kind of identifies where we have lots created and that could be built upon currently. Just a summary of the building permits. Generally, about 20% of our building permits are issued out east of the total building permits, and this gives you an idea of what those are. The purple is the eastern end type of building permits. The lighter blue is the western. With that, I'll turn it over to Dwayne, and he can talk a little bit about the impact fee, initiation, kind of those sorts of things.
Good morning, Commissioners. Just as a refresh your memory, we actually started looking at...
I'm sorry to interrupt. We need your name and address for the record.
Dwayne Guthrie with Tishler Vice, yes. We actually started looking at this, I think, back in 2012 as a kind of follow-up to the long-range transportation plan. We evaluated different funding options for the eastern part of the county, and we made some recommendations. And this really, impact fees are just part of the overall funding mix. It's not the total solution, but it would definitely be a help. So what we want to kind of point out that there is substantial growth, and that new development will be paying for just the growth share of improvements. It's not the fixing the problems or anything like that, but it is a necessary component. The fees are basically designed to, like Brian said, provide a backbone kind of a backbone network that's shown on the map there with the green lines. The idea is that all development within the service area helps pay for that. The impact fees are not designed just to build or improve the street in front of a particular project, but they're more designed to provide a network or a grid of streets that can accommodate development throughout the entire area. And so the improvements will not only eliminate hot spots or congestion areas, but also provide alternative routes so that people can get to and from their development. The development projections are shown there, and they're basically devised as part of your recent update on their comprehensive plan. You looked at tiers 1, 2, and 3. The impact fees will cover all those areas. So we basically took key demographic projections, which were population and jobs for the unincorporated area. It's highlighted in those yellow cells. And then we did annual average annual projections using those 2040 forecasts that were updated by staff. We used exponential growth curves, so we have more conservative annual growth rates at the beginning of the time period, and then those increases grow over time, because we want to make sure that we don't overstate the amount of projected development in the short range. Here's a couple of large developments for this area that were considered in part of the process, and I'll highlight this in just a few minutes, but basically a part of the impact fee concept is that you can't be asked to pay twice. So if you provide some improvements as part of a development agreement, then there'll have to be either site-specific credits for those or developer reimbursements depending on the specifics. And so a lot of the internal improvements will be provided by the developers for these large projects, and the improvements funded by the impact fees will focus more on that grid network that we showed you before. But as Brian said, we did amend the list of improvements to include a specific road segment through that northern area up there near I-70. Here's just some specifics on those large developments that staff is well aware of, and those we use in the development forecast that we showed you before. So it's Prosper and Sky Ranch for a couple of those key projects that have been taken into account as part of those development projections for that Eastern Plains area. I'm just going to highlight some of the key facts of impact fees in general. Transportation is one of the capital facilities or public facilities that can be funded with impact fees. Jurisdictions in Colorado had fees actually before the enabling legislation was passed back in 2001. It's just part of the home rule power. But the enabling legislation for Colorado helped clarify the rules of the game and kind of make sure that everybody's treating the process in the same manner. Its idea is that new development is paying a one-time payment for its share of growth-related capital projects, and it's very clear that it's an aggregate kind of process because the last bullet point there talks about that the fee is supposed to be legislatively adopted over a broad class of property. So it is very much more of a funding strategy and an overall capital improvements kind of funding program and not a project, very specific project or ad hoc kind of analysis that we're doing. So that's why we did the total development projections for the entire service area. We have that capital improvement program for the entire service area, and basically the fees are being done more on a policy level than on addressing individual development projects. Fees cannot be used for operating and maintenance costs. That's very important. Basic umbrella that we're doing the impact fees under is the police power umbrella, so it has to do with health, safety, and welfare. It's not a tax, although impact fees are often get labeled with that ugly T word. It really is a different set of legal standards that we're trying to do. And you basically, some of the key things are addressed in how you account for the impact fees and how you spend the money so that the new development is both funding capital improvements directly needed for that new development and also benefiting by those capital improvements. You kind of can think of impact fees more as a contractual arrangement where the county is going to start collecting money for that long list of improvements that we showed you earlier. That was over $100 million worth of growth. The growth share was over $100 million. And that those things will be built over a long-range time frame, about 24 years. So as you periodically update your capital improvement program, we'll get better cost information. You can prioritize those improvements, and you'll go ahead and basically in small baby steps start building those capital improvements, and the entire program will be constructed by 2040. So we can do fees basically with three different time perspectives. We can look backwards and say, what have we already built that we want to oversize? That's oversized and still has capacity. We call that cost recovery, but we don't use those very often on transportation. That's done more for utilities. The one method that we're using this time is more the plan-based, where we're looking out based on our transportation plan and identifying specific improvements that will benefit new development. And then the credits, we've mentioned those a couple of times at the bottom, that there are site-specific credits or developer reimbursements as needed to make sure no one double pays. The county does not have to adopt transportation impact fees. You can either accept lower levels of service or do less or do nothing, which is kind of okay for in the short run, but usually doesn't work over the long run. You can provide funding from broad-based revenues like your property taxes, and that's what Brian basically pointed out earlier, that with the proposed reduction in the revised fees, that we're going to need a little more of those broad-based revenues to help make up the funding gap. But that's an acceptable policy, and the staff feels that we can do that with the capital improvement program that we proposed. And this is, I think, the last slide that I'll touch on, just kind of details of how the calculations are done. Basically, we use the vehicle miles of travel as the denominator that we're spreading the gross share of the cost over. And vehicle miles of travel basically is a combination of the trip generation rates, so it's how many times you travel, but also how far you travel. So there's a distance component to that. And so all those input variables are customized, very specific data to Arapahoe County, and it makes the fees proportionate to the amount of development, either residential or non-residential, and then drilling down even within those different categories so that there's different fees for industrial and commercial and office and other services. So that's the highlights of the methodology, and now Brian's going to go back and kind of wrap up on the process that we've been through.
So as you're aware, we had a public meeting on the 19th. That's who we advertised within, and we actually sent specific notices to a large number of folks out in the area as well. At the public meeting, prior to the meeting, I received 14 calls asking about the fee and what it is. Most of it was, how do we charge it and who does it go against? And basically the answer is, this is on all new development. It does not charge those who are out there unless there is a building expansion of some sort greater than 50%, like we talked about. We had 30 people attend that meeting, and then after the meeting, we had one-on-one meetings and an email, and I did provide that email from Tom Bradbury for you, and I'll talk about that a little bit. The implementation date was one of the comments that we received. It ranged anywhere from started on January 1st of 17 to January 1st of 2018, with most settling that they would like to see it March-April timeframe. What's included before you is an April 1st, 2017 implementation date. So anything submitted, any type of permit in the process prior to that date would be grandfathered in and would not have to pay. Any application on or after that date would have to pay the fee. One of the comments came in relative to the county shouldn't do the fee, we should just increase taxes to cover the costs. And then Sky Ranches had a comment offsets associated with being in RTD and regional funding in I-70, and that they saw no direct impact. That direct impact was addressed via the addition of that roadway that I talked about earlier, being 6th Avenue. I did receive an email yesterday from Tom Bradbury, a large property owner out east, and primarily in his email was about Bijou Knoll and a development that has been going on for 8 years. He has about 18 homes remaining. He felt like the additional 3,000 homes have a negative impact on their market position, estimated that 99% of the residents utilize I-70, and that he would like the fee deferred until Quincy is extended, which is one of the improvements to Exmoor. Well, our response to that is that essentially what he's asking for is a cost recovery methodology, and that is not the methodology that we used. We used a plan-based methodology, and that means that all new development pays for the plan over the period of time, that 24 years, and that accommodates all development throughout the entire area. We'll construct those segments of those planned backbone roadways to reduce congestion and provide alternative routes over that time frame. Therefore, all fee payers would benefit as those improvements are built. We felt that charging a fee starting April 1st is equitable to all those applying for the permit, And again, this would be less than 1% of the cost to build a home out there. So we saw it as a negative or as a minimal impact. So with that, that's a quick highlight of our process that we've gone through. A lot of information that you've seen before, and we're willing to answer any questions that you might have.
Yeah, I had a question on Mr. Bradbury's comment, and I know Quincy Road is on the list, but do you have any idea of, Brian, of when that roadway would be, what's the priority? Because none of these are prioritized, but considering this development, and I don't know, we may have to look at a map so I can really see where this development is, but what else is being developed there, and how soon would is this at the later end or earlier end of development?
Actually, this is one of the crossings of Bijou Creek, and that he's talking about. And we're in the process of acquiring right-of-way as we speak associated with that project. And where it is that that project, and if you bear with me, I can pull up a map and show you where that is.
Okay.
Like I said, we are in the process of acquiring that from Cattlemen's Trust and the Bradburys, actually, and it's on the north side of one of our open spaces. So we're looking at moving forward with it. One of the issues associated with that segment of road that raises it probably in a little higher priority is that a bridge that is further south is weight restricted, and therefore you have a lot of out-of-direction travel in that area that we're looking at. How do we improve that? It's a rather large bridge structure that would need to go in, very expensive. And so we're looking at possibly a low water crossing that could be used a majority of the time, and then when we do have overtopping, let it be in the 50-year storm or the 10-year storm. We haven't finalized that, close the roadway. But during the majority of the time, that roadway would be open and therefore used for travel.
As a follow-up, Chair, how many homes I know it says there are 18 homes to be completed. How many homes are in this entire development? I know. 40 or 50. Okay.
So we'll reference, we'll say about 50 homes. I don't have that information. If that's something you would like details on, I can dig that up. But.
Well, I was just curious to know how many are going to be paying the fee and how many, since we're not doing cost recovery, how many have already been built but have not paid anything toward that, and that connection. Do we have any, any other developments? I know a couple of the large developments have not even started yet. There are no homes built there, so that's clear. This one's less clear because it's...
Yeah, and if you go back to that map that I showed previously in terms of the number of lots that are available, that shows that there is a significant number of lots that could be built upon in the eastern portion of the county that exist without even platting or 35-acre developments occurring that would subdivide some of those 40 and greater parcels.
And I'd be interested, as Commissioner Bockenfeld knows a lot more than I do about this area, but, in terms of the development, and this development sort of split, straddling the fee, and those that were built without the fee. So, anyway.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Weimer.
All right, thank you.
We'll open up the for a public hearing. Are there any citizens who wish to make a comment about this particular development? Or this, excuse me, this transportation fee? Ms. Fay? This is, so you have just 3 minutes, and it's just for a comment. Okay.
Diana Mays reading into the record for J.M. Fay. Development needs to pay for itself, and the cost should not be stuck into the backs of existing residents. Stuck onto the backs of existing residents. Please remember this when you talk about it, vote on this, etc. There are a lot of large proposed developments in this area, and this county has other things it also needs to pay for / fund, including including one snow shoveling ordinance.
Thank you, Ms. Fay. Just to clarify, these are not retroactive. These are for only new developments. Okay, very good. Okay, any other comments? Okay, we will close the public hearing, and if there are further questions, or I will entertain a motion.
Madam Chairman, in a second here I'll make a motion, but one to set a little bit of a foundation for the motion. Several years ago, with the previous board and through our work at Denver Regional Council of Governments with the urban growth boundary, we've kind of constrained growth in the Denver metropolitan area, and we did that in order to force some of the infill. But we knew that once the infill in the Denver metropolitan area was going to be absorbed, that at some point in time there needed to be an expansion of that urban growth boundary. And so it's like a balloon. If you squeeze that balloon, growth is going to go somewhere. And our studies that were done at Dr. Cog, approximately at the time when I was chairman, showed that that growth was going to go out. If you constrain growth, it was going to go out that corridor. And our corridor study that we've done also reflected that growth was going to go out the corridor. Either we can get ahead of that growth or react to it, and the decision was made that we would get ahead of the growth, and that's why Adams County and Arapahoe County together worked on the corridor development plan. Knowing that the I-70 corridor is an untapped economic engine for both counties, and Arapahoe County was the lead on this particular project, and as we anticipated, growth did start heading out the corridor. That growth is Aurora, the Prosper development, the Sky Ranch development have been there for some time, postured to start developing once the economy turned around. And as Ms. Fay alluded to, many of our constituents in Arapahoe County doesn't want to pay for growth. They expect growth to pay its own way. And I hear that also from my constituents in the eastern part of the county. So that being the case, if we didn't do what we were doing today, our existing residences were going to end up having to pay for the growth. And and that would have been on their backs and at their expense. So to prevent that from happening, that's why this rural impact fee that I'm preparing to make a motion on is something that I think is acceptable, and I'll make a motion for an approval, and at the end of it I will ask for a second. So here's the motion. I have read the 2016 Tischler-Weiss Consultant Report and the Public Works and Development Board Summary Report with the staff recommendations for adopting the Rural Transportation Impact Fee, and have considered such recommendations as well as the public comment heard today, and find myself in agreement with the staff recommendations, and now hereby move that the Rural Transportation Impact Fee, as set forth in the consultant report and the board summary report, be adopted for the Eastern Territory of Arapahoe County as such territory is defined in the reports, and that the recommended schedule of fees for new residential and non-residential development recommended in the reports be adopted in the reduced fee amounts set forth in the board summary report, with such fee amounts to be subject to periodic review at least every 2 years, and with the effective date for commencement of the fees to start on April 1st, 2017. All as presented by staff this day, and I would ask for a second.
I'll second.
Okay, it has been moved and seconded All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, hearing none, that motion passes. So,
Thank you, Commissioner.
our next public hearing is case W15-003, amend land development code for farming and ranching events and rodeos. Our presenter is Jason Reynolds, and Bob Hill is our attorney on that. Mr. Hill, is there a foundation?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. This is a code amendment to the Land Development Code, or proposed code amendment, I should say. This matter has been advertised and noticed in accordance with the law and requirements under our code, and the board does have jurisdiction.
Thank you. Mr. Reynolds.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Board of County Commissioners. As Mr. Hill mentioned, this is initiated by the county. The proposal would amend our seasonal farming or ranching event definition to clarify what is permitted without a temporary use permit. It also removes seasonal from the seasonal farm and ranch event because events are not necessarily constrained to a particular season. The proposal also clarifies that rodeos with user fees or admission fees are not part of a seasonal farming or ranch event, which is the case in the current definition. There's sort of a conflict where we have a definition for rodeo and then we have a definition for ranching events, which includes rodeos, which has caused some enforcement problems for the county. Rodeos continue to be a special exception use, which requires a public hearing with the Board of Adjustment. And the rodeo definition, we are also proposing to remove some standards that are difficult to enforce and may actually be beyond the scope of the county's authority under state law. This did go out for referral, and on April 19th, the Planning Commission held a public hearing, and we got some feedback with concerns about potential impacts on agritourism. So in May, staff met with concerned residents at the Long Hope's Donkey Shelter and revised the regs based on the feedback we got there. And on October 18th, the Planning Commission recommended approval of the revisions to the Board of County Commissioners with the support of the folks who met out at Long Hope's Donkey Shelter. This comes to you with a recommendation of approval, and I'd be happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Are there questions? Seeing none, I'll open up the public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak on this matter? Seeing none, I close the public hearing. May I have a motion? Mr. Bockenfeld.
Madam Chairman, in full disclosure, I was at the community meeting. I did not speak. I was only listening, fact-finding for the ability to make a decision today on the modification of the Longhorn donkey facility. I will make a motion. This has been a long-term issue that Arapahoe County has been working on, trying to manage rodeo events that were unauthorized in the eastern part of the county. We developed a preliminary land development code adjustment, and as was alluded to by staff, there was some concern about the agritourism activities in the eastern part of the county being impacted. Staff did a fabulous job managing that issue, meeting with the community, and coming up with a revised document that at this time we think meets both the needs of the county and protects the agritourism culture. May need further modifications in the future, but right now we feel that we can work with this particular land development code adjusted to accomplish what we need to accomplish. That being said, I will go ahead and make a motion for approval. It's W15-003, Land Development Code amendments to Chapters 4, 5, 19 to address farming and ranching events and rodeos. In the case of W15-003, Land Development Code Amendment to Chapters 4, Agricultural Zone Districts, Chapter 5, Rural Residential Zone Districts, and 19, Definitions, to address farming and ranching events and rodeos, The county commissioners have read the proposed code amendment and board summary report and considered additional information presented during the public hearing. We find ourselves in agreement with findings 1 through 3 set forth in the board summary report dated November 3rd, 2016, and recommend that the Board of County Commissioners approve the amendment as submitted, including retaining and modifying the definition of rodeo with the following 2 conditions of approval. Number 1, minor modifications to the text identified as necessary are required prior to incorporation of this amendment into the existing land development code. Staff, in conjunction with the county attorney's office, is hereby authorized to make the necessary modifications to the text. Number 2, modifications to Chapter 4, 5, and 19 of the Land Development Code will be effective and integrated into the existing code upon approval by the Board of County Commissioners following a public hearing. I would ask for a second. Madam Chair? I'll second the amendment.
Okay, it has been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none, the motion W15-003 Land Development Code Amendments to Chapters 4, 5, and 19 to address farming and ranching events and rodeos has passed. Thank you very much. Thank you, staff. Now is the time for commissioners to comment on any commissioners? Yes. Mr. Holland.
Madam Chair, today is November 22nd, and it was a very dark moment back in 1962 when President John F. Kennedy was assassinated. I'm hoping that we all learned our lessons as Americans about the importance of a transition of leadership, and that that dreadful day will never occur again. Thank you.
Any other comment? Okay, thank you. With that, I would like to wish everyone a wonderful Thanksgiving. Stay safe, drive carefully, and we'll see you next time. Thank you very much. Hearing room for a study session.